Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today we're going to be posing the question, is it worth reloading your own ammo anymore? Okay, I know I've hinted in the past about doing some more reloading related content, and I thought that since it's been kind of so long since I've done instructional based content around reloading, that maybe the best way to kind of get back into it is to talk a little bit about some of the changes in price and components and the availability of components, which could be a very big factor in whether or not you decide to get into the art of reloading your own ammunition. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting today's video. If you're looking for a career in gunsmithing, they're definitely your go-to source. They've got some awesome instructors, wonderful curriculum. They can teach you stuff on the business side, firearms technology. Unfortunately, I don't think they offer the reloading course anymore, but they do have a really great drone course. So lots of things you can learn to get yourself on the right path for getting a career in the gunsmithing world or running your own gun store. Check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them that Eric sent you. There's a link down below. You can check them out. So, I've done a lot of reloading content over the years, and, it's really interesting to see that, yes, prices on components have changed considerably, which can lead to, maybe some people thinking, well, is it really worth reloading some of the core calibers, like your basic pistol and rifle rounds? It's a broad question, but it allows me to really attack it from a lot of different directions and kind of give some of my thoughts on where we could really be at in this situation. So, are the prices on components up a lot? Yeah. So the old saying, and when it comes to military surplus or reloading components or ammunition, is buy it cheap and stack it deep. All right, I'm going to give you some examples here. Here's an 8-pound keg of Hodgkin Tight Group. All right, we can see here that the price is $178. Of course, that's retail. When I used to work at Moss, all right, I'm just giving some insider baseball. A lot of times Michelle would sell me stuff at 10% over cost. I'm not going to talk about the standard markup because I don't want to get anyone's business out there. But let's just say that my cost on this powder was significantly lower than $179. Okay. So let's just use the retail price of $179 and let's compare it to what an 8-pound keg of Tight Group costs now. All right, I found a website that had some in stock for $312.99. So you can quickly see that the price is, let's just say, for better lack of word, roughly double, maybe 80, 90% higher, okay, than what it was. Now, I bought this powder about 7 years ago, so it was before 2020, before the coof and everything was going on. All right, let's look at this keg of powder. This is a keg of Vitivori. Well, gravity, okay. This is a keg of Vitivori N140. That could have been an earth-shattering kaboom. That would have been actually kind of funny, like Marvin the Martian. This is a keg of Vitivori N140. This is the powder that I use for loading the D166 spec projectiles for the 7.62 by 54 rimmed cartridge for the M39. Uses a D166 bullet, which is made by Lapua. Now, actually, to sort of mention that, I don't think Lapua is actually making that projectile anymore, but that's neither here nor there. Let's just say that that's a type of powder that, maybe for a reloader's purposes, is a little bit specialized, okay? Is someone going to buy a keg of Varget, or are they going to buy a keg of Vitivori M140? Probably going to buy a keg of Varget, right? They're going to buy it for reloading their rifle cartridges. They're going to buy stuff like H335. They're going to buy stuff like Varget. They're going to buy stuff like Benchmark. Okay, stuff that's a little bit easier to get. They're going to buy IMR 4350, 4895. If you're loading for your M1 Grand Service rifle, you're going to buy Vitivori, IMR 4895, I believe is the correct spec powder for the M2 ball. Okay, so certain powders are required for certain loading. If you're loading 50 cal, chances are you probably, like me, you have kegs of US 869 sitting around. That's also a Hodgkin product, I believe. Let's look at primers. Okay, we're going to break some of this down, but okay, here's a sleeve of primers. This is 100 Magnum primers. Now, this is large rifle Magnum primers from CCI. And we see the retail price is $3.29. Now, y'all, look, those are like 10-year ago prices, okay? Again, buy it cheap, stack it deep. today's drudgery in terms of buying components is going to be tomorrow's deal. As much as I hate to say that, whether it's by virtue of inflation, whether or not the inflation is artificial or not, man-made. I mean, come on, we're not going to go there politically, but let's just say when things go up in price, yeah, it sucks to feel the pinch to have to pay more for a given commodity, but today's bad deal is tomorrow's good deal. And unfortunately, that's how it's been. So I've always on my channel told people to buy cheap and stack deep when you can. If you have the extra money and you can afford some extra primers, then by all means, no better time than the present. Now, do we see a situation where maybe the price on primers is going to get cheaper and the price on powder is going to get cheaper? I don't think so, but there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. For one, the availability of components has gotten much better over the last year or two, and we've noticed that the prices on ammunition have gone down a good bit too. I've even seen some deals online where you're talking a 50-round box of 9mm ball ammunition can sometimes be had for, $11 to $12, okay? That's not a bad deal. And you're talking most of your brass case like Blazer and S&B and things like that, you're just basic, ball ammunition, maybe some of your American Eagle loads and things like that, and just a, 124 ball 9mm. We'll use 9mm as an example. That factory ammo is about $15 a box. Sometimes you can find it on sale for $13.50 or $14, but generally $14 to $15 is about the going rate. Now let's go back to that 8-pound keg of Tight Group that I unceremoniously dropped on the floor. But anyway, let's look at that for a second, and let's just do a little quick math here, okay? So here's a way you can kind of extrapolate what you can get out of a given amount of powder. So if we're talking 8 pounds, okay, we're going to multiply that by 7,000 grains. That's because there's 7,000 grains in a pound of powder. That's 8 pounds of powder, okay? 7,000 grains times 8 gives us 56,000 grains of powder. Okay, I'm not about to try to pick the jug back up, but let's just say your average 9mm charge, let's use 9mm as an example because Tight Group is definitely a type of powder you can load your 9s with. Let's just throw a number out and say that your average charge of Tight Group, I'm going to guess, now this is not data, I'm not trying to give you reloading data, this is just, I'm giving you a number off the top of my head. Let's say that an average entry-level charge of Tight Group is probably about 4.5 grains. Let's call it 5, just make it an even number. We take 56,000 grains and we divide by 5 grains per load. That gives us 11,200 rounds out of an 8-pound keg of powder. All right, 11,200 rounds. I don't know, let's divide by 50 round boxes. That's 224 boxes of ammo that I can get out of that 8-pound keg of powder that I then paid $178 for. Okay, now you quickly begin to see like, wow, that's a pretty good deal, okay? So if we take 224 boxes of 50, okay, we know what a 50-round box of 9mm costs. Let's take that 224 boxes, okay, and I guess what we're going to kind of figure out here is if we have 224 boxes of ammo, all right, at 50 rounds, I mean, that's certainly like not a lot of powder that you're paying for in each box of rounds, okay? Now, when we take that and we extrapolate like the cost of the primer and the cost of the projectile, can you load 9mm at the current rate? Like if a current, keg of powder is $312, yeah, you can load it for an affordable amount. It is going to cost more, all right? But generally, your factory ammo is costing more, okay? So how can we get around some of that cost and get the cost back down lower? Well, you can always cast. All right, this is a 6-cavity gang mold. All right, this is a 124 grain gang mold from Lee. These can be had for still, the prices are like maybe $40 on these molds, and you do have to purchase a set of handles with them. But if you have a good source of wheel weights or things like that, scrap lead, you can cast your own projectiles, and that's saving you a lot of money right there, okay? When we look at cost of, let's say, a given round of ammunition, if, let's say, we have $14, and let's just say a box of ammo is $14.99, and we divide by 50 rounds. That's what, 29 cents a shot. So we can extrapolate the cost of the projectile, the brass, the powder, the primer, to figure out what all those components go into that 29 cents, including what the profit margin is. Mind you, this is $15 for a retail. You buy it and go shoot it. We're not talking about making the ammo. We're talking about you buy this for 29 cents. So 29 cents seems to kind of be like the going rate on what we're talking about here. You can extrapolate all that out. Now, on the cast bullet, you don't have to purchase the projectile. You cast them yourself. Now, what comes down to play here is labor, okay? Yes, can you get the component cost down? Even by today's standards, can we buy a lot of powder? Okay, even if that powder is double the price of what it was when I bought it 6 or 7 years ago, I think it's safe to say that extrapolated over, 12,000, nearly, 11,200 rounds, okay, it's not going to be that huge of an increase in price. I mean, yes, the powder is costing double, but the powder is still in a negligible amount of cost in the individual round. If we took 11,200 rounds, well, let's see, we take 170, what was that? It was $178, and we divide by the 11,200 rounds. That comes down to what, 1.5 cents per round in powder cost or something like that, right? So nearly, I don't know, let's just round up to 2 cents. Let's factor in spillage and waste and just say that it's like 2 cents of powder in each round. So that means that even if the cost of the powder is double, we take that number and we divide or multiply by 2. All right, then that gives us, let's be generous and round up to 4 cents. Okay, so let's write that down, 4 cents. All right, so that means that 4 cents of powder go into a single round of 9mm ammunition, even at that's the new price. Okay, so you got 4 cents of powder. That's at a 4.5 grain charge. Obviously, as that charge increases, which it could very well be higher than what I'm quoting, I'm just giving you an example of how to extrapolate the math to figure out where all this stuff is coming from. All right, there's no cost in the projectile. Let's say that we cast a projectile and we wound up with, okay, maybe you got free will weights from the tire shop. You know, maybe you have a source of lead that is very, very inexpensive or next to free. Maybe you go around the scrap, whatever. Let's just say, for whatever intents and purposes here, that the lead is almost free. So then it's really just your time to melt it down and cast the projectile. So you have no cost in the projectile. Now, the big kicker is brass. Now, if you're using once fire brass, cool. You're just picking up your spent brass, and once you've got that collection of brass, you just kind of continuously reuse it. You're going to have some cost in electricity to run your tumbler, to tumble the brass, tumbling media, polishing media, that sort of thing. You have dies and equipment. We're not going to go over all the dies and equipment because I've already done a video where I extrapolate the cost of how long it takes you to earn back the money that you spend on the equipment. This is more about like what does the physical cost of the ammo actually end up being if you go as low down the rabbit hole as you can of trying to get it as cheap, like casting your own projectile, buying bulk powder. All right, primers. Primers have gone up a lot. I've seen some sleeves of primers sell for the better part of $10 for 100, okay? You know, sometimes $12. So you're talking an increase in the primer cost by, I mean, here we are for a Magnum rifle primer, which is traditionally a much more expensive primer, for $3.29. So if these are $3.29 from 8-10 years ago, they are easily in the $10 to $12 range now. So you have a much higher cost for the actual primer component itself. Let's just make the math simple, and let's say that the primers are 10 cents a piece. All right, so let's add 10 cents to that figure. All right, so now we're at 14 cents. Okay, we're at 14 cents for our powder and primer at the new cost over what the components would be. So that means you're going to have 14 cents in components with lead projectiles you're melting down yourself and the reused brass case. Let's factor in a brand new projectile. So I think I was checking Barry's the other day. Barry's offers like, I think, 500 round counts of like 9mm projectiles in bulk. And those, you used to be able to buy Barry's bullets for like $32 for 500 or $35 for 500. Believe me, I can't tell you how many thousands and thousands of those Berry's projectiles that I shot. But I tell you, I checked the other day, and I think they're more like $80 or $90 for 500 now. Which, all right, let's see if buying projectiles over casting is still a good deal or not. All right, so we take $90 and we divide that $90 into 500 pieces. That gives us 18 cents. Okay, let's go ahead and take 18 cents. So I'm salvaging my brass, but in this case, I'm buying a factory projectile at the current new ripe price. I'm buying a primer at the new price, the new, and I'm buying powder at the new. All right, what does that give us? That's 18 cents plus 10 cents plus 4 cents. That gives us 68 cents. If we're buying a projectile that costs that much, 68 cents, we take 68 cents and we multiply by a box of 50. Hang on. 68 cents and we multiply by a box of 50. That gives us $34 a box. That's not a good deal at all. Now, I could be off on those Berry's projectile price. Might be more like $50 or $59. Okay, so, but you get the idea. You can extrapolate those component costs. Let's say that the Berry's projectiles, I might be off on that price a bit. Let's say the Berry's projectiles were more like $52 a box or something for 500. That might be actually more realistic. Let's run the math again at $52. Okay, that gives us 9 cents. Let's just round up to 10. That gives us 10 cents a shot. Okay, you starting to see where this is leading, y'all? Okay, 10 cents a shot. For the projectile, if you're buying a Berry's plated projectile, 10 cents for a primer, and that's if you're paying at the butt ring price. That gives you 24 cents a shot. All right, what did we determine earlier that ammo is costing when you buy it for $15 a box? What did we say, right? We said 29 cents a shot, 24 cents a shot. So you're saving at that rate with the projectile and reusing your brass, you're saving 5 cents a round. How much a box is that? All right, if that's 5 cents a round for 50 rounds, that's $2.50 a box that you're saving to make the ammo yourself, buying new projectiles, new primer, and powder at the new rate. So you can quickly see how, all right, is it that loading 9mm is not going to be an advantageous thing for you to try to accomplish? I wouldn't say that yeah, you are saving money. You're saving $2.50 a box. All right, if you're saving $2.50 a box, a case of 500 rounds of 9mm by 50 rounds, that's 10 boxes. All right, let's just say a case of 500, and then we multiply that by $2.50. You're saving $25 on every 500 rounds. That may not seem like a lot of money. All right, is your labor worth that? I mean, how long does it take you to load 500 rounds? Does it take an hour? Does it take 2 hours? Now you have to extrapolate the value of the savings into your time. Is your time worth $25 for a few hours of work to load 500 rounds, depending on the press? Well, if you get some crazy automated press that can throw a ton of rounds in a short amount of time, you're making that time back up. But now you also have the increased cost of buying the fancier press to have a, like a Dillon XL 1050 or 650. Now you've got the increased price of the press that you've got to now extrapolate the value of that press atomized over the time it takes you to earn that money back at that rate. Now, let's go back to cast bullets. This is where it gets interesting. All right, even if we're buying a 10-cent primer and we're buying, let's just say, 4 cents worth of powder, okay, that then becomes 14 cents that we're now spending on that. Since we're not buying the Berry's projectiles, we're only, at this point, we're casting the bullets. I'm going to assume you have lead for next to free. We're not going to get into buying certified alloys. Let's just say you're using wheel weights and you're quenching wheel weights out of a 6-gang cavity mold, okay? That's 14 cents per shot. So if we take 14 cents per shot, did y'all ever think you would actually use all that math you learned in school? I'm actually terrible at math. I can't believe I'm pulling this out of my head, but I swear the math is correct. You take 14 cents a shot by 50 rounds. Oh, wow. Now we're talking $7 for 50 rounds. We take that same 500 round box. That's 10 boxes at $7. Now you're talking $70 for 500 rounds of 9mm. Now, granted, yes, you're saving the money off not having to buy that, let's just say 10 to 14, 18 cent bullet. But now you're also having to figure out your time it takes you to cast all the bullets, size them, lubricate them. Some of you are probably powder coating these projectiles. So that all adds into the time it takes you to load this ammo. So what it really comes down to, is it worth reloading your own ammo anymore? On core calibers, if you're casting, yeah, you can still save a lot of money, even at today's current rate, if you're willing to cast and you have the time to do it. You're going to spend a little bit more time casting, but you can certainly load ammo cheap. I remember when I used to load, listen, y'all, I remember when I used to load a 50-round box of cast 9mm ammo for, gosh, couldn't have been more than $4 a box for 50. Okay. Now, at the time, I was a broke, student, and yeah, if I could spend a whole afternoon rolling some ammo and save myself, the better part of 50, 60 bucks, I mean, that's a lot of money to someone who's broke, okay? So it all comes down to what your time is worth when it comes to the core calibers, or let's say you're trying to throw some specialized load. All right, maybe you're shooting a competition and you're trying to make power. You're trying to get a 150 grain bullet moving fast to make power in a competition or something like that. And okay, a factory doesn't load the round that you need to make power, and therefore you have to roll your own in order to get the exact load that you want. Or maybe you have a crazy match grade 9mm load that you love, and it's way cheaper to load that match grade ammo than it is to buy it through a company that specializes in that type of stuff. Okay. In those situations, you're probably going to spend the same amount you would spend on your normal ball ammo if you bought it from the company, but then you're going to, with your time being sacrificed, you'll also get a much better load for that same money. That's the best way to extrapolate that. All right, what other ways is it still really advantageous for you to reload your own ammunition? Well, one way is if you're shooting milsurps, okay? You're rolling ammo for your 577 450 Martini Henry. You're loading ammo for your 577 Snyder, you're loading 43 Spanish, you're loading 11mm Mauser, you name it, all the weird black powder stuff. You're loading 43 Beaumont. You're loading all this weird stuff off basic cases like 5090 or 45 110 or something like that. You're loading black powder ammo especially. To buy factory black powder ammo is astronomically expensive. You wouldn't think that it is, but it is. So loading black powder cartridges, you can save yourself a metric ton of money. I remember 10X was selling, I think, 20 rounds of Martini Henry ammo for like $110. That's to get the real black powder stuff. That's an astronomically expensive sum of money to pay for a cartridge for an old rifle like that. You can roll your own out of 24 gauge shot shell holes for a lot less money. Now, it's labor intensive, but you are actually going to get some really great ammo, and it's going to be way less than what you'd have to pay to buy it. Plus, you get the fulfillment of knowing that you made it yourself, and that's a really fulfilling type of thing. It feels good to make your own ammo, especially for an old gun like that. So if you're still loading a lot of old school milsurp stuff, especially in black powder, you can certainly still save yourself a ton of money by rolling your own. That hasn't really changed. The component cost has probably gone up a little bit, but overall, it's still quite affordable to roll your own black powder cartridge contained rounds. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about black powder front stuffers. Okay, like my Norwegian Kammerlader. Okay. Yeah, I have a custom mold that I had made for that gun. I can throw some projectiles for it, very cheap. Musket caps are still available and extremely affordable, so the prices on those haven't gone up a lot. That's mainly just because not as many people buy musket caps, four-wing musket caps, and number 10 and then number 11 percussion caps as much as they do normal primers. So the cost on those hasn't gone up a ton. It's gone up a little bit, but not enough to really say that makes a huge difference. The cost of black powder has gone up considerably. But if you buy in bulk, you can actually still get some really good deals. I know Goix, I think they're going direct now. So there are some black powder companies that have gone direct. Okay, like the Stutz Company, I think they're still going direct. If you call up and you order a lot and only pay one hazmat fee, I think they'll put as much as like, I want to say it's like 25 or 28 pounds of powder on one hazmat fee. So if you're willing to order black powder at high quantity and you have a good safe place to store it, you can still get black powder for a very affordable price. So black powder hasn't really gone up that much. I would say the largest increase in component cost that I've seen is primers, and followed probably secondly by projectiles and powder. So if you are buying fresh projectiles, powder, and primers, you're going to see an increase in the price of what you're paying to shoot, but you're still going to produce the same quality ammo. I mean, obviously, there have been a lot of new projectile designs come out, things like that. I mean, Barnes is making their wonderful triple shock in a bunch of different projectile designs. Sierra released their Game King, which is a match grade hunting bullet that does really well. Hornady is doing a great job with some of their AMAX offerings. You can also buy all of those in component form, okay? So there's still a lot of wonderful match grade bullets out there that you can get. And the prices on them, actually, I've noticed, like for a 20 round box of Federal Gold Medal match, let's just say 175 grain 308 gold medal match. I've noticed the price on that go from like $40, sometimes $45 for 20 down to like $28, $29, which would lead me to believe that the supply is kind of loosening up and the demand is kind of going down a little bit, at least on 308 as an example. And namely, also 30 cal projectiles have started to slip down in price a little bit. So it really just comes down to what people are shooting more or less of. You see that a lot of people are shooting 6.5s now. A lot of people are running 6mm now. So yeah, 30 cal projectiles might be taking a little bit of a back seat. So maybe if you haven't loaded for your 300 Win Mag or your AUG-6 for a long time, or you haven't loaded some 308, might be a good opportunity to get into some 30 cal projectiles while the prices are lower. And you got all these people shooting the throat burners like the 6mm and the 6.5s. Not to say those projectiles aren't affordable, but the 30 cal looks like they're considerably more affordable. So if you're talking, all right, go back to Milsurps, you're shooting a K31 service rifle that uses a 308 diameter projectile for reloading purposes. All right, maybe it's a good time to dust off the K31. If you already got a bunch of brass sitting around, you might be able to get some match bullets for a very reasonable price compared to what they were just a few years ago. So it's all about just understanding the trends in the component prices and kind of extrapolating, hey, what's your time worth to you? So to answer the question, I know it's a very long-winded response. This was a long-form video, but I know this video appeals to a very specific group of people. I don't really expect this video to get as much traffic or views as a normal video might, because I know this is a much more dedicated and more scientifically minded group of people that care about this kind of stuff. But I still want to put the information out there because this is the kind of question that I get all the time. So to answer the question, is it worth reloading your own ammunition anymore? Yes, it is. It depends on the circumstance. It depends on the cartridge, and it depends on what your time is worth to you. But I would say that's still worthwhile because it's a very fun thing to do. It's a very fulfilling activity. You feel proud when you shoot a really tiny group with rifle rounds that you rolled your own. You know, you feel proud when you see a 50 cal round go down range that you loaded. It feels great to see a giant puff of black powder smoke and know that, man, I rolled that round myself and I formed the brass and I annealed it and I cast the bullet and I did every little thing meticulously, and wow, this gun shoots great. You know, it feels great to have those things happen. And that alone still makes it worth doing no matter what the cost is. So not everything is always about necessarily the money or the cost. It's about what it does in the sense of fulfillment that it gives you. And reloading still does that for me. I haven't done as much lately because I've been really busy, but overall, reloading to me is still a very, very calming and soothing thing that I really still enjoy the process of. And it really does get my brain into this mode of just really paying attention to detail. And there's something really cool about that, about just really engineering that detail into your processes and coming up with the best ammo that you can make, and sometimes shoots way better than factory ammo. So I think there's something to be said for that. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I know this one was a bit long, but I appreciate all of you who stuck with me here till the end. I have many more videos on the way, lots of stuff coming. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.